T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Own it, own it, own it, Kong. I own it. It did.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Welcome to Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Welcome to WWT Live. I'm just like, look, the internet, not even the internet, social media, it's a love-hate because there's certain things that made me hilarious, but then you find yourself looking at it like I'm looking at it now, and I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? Anywho, we got a lot to talk about. Big congratulations to 2 people who are signed and re-signed to big major promotions, but I am not alone. The professor is in the building. What's going on?
Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm just like, it feels like Friday. What day is it? Wednesday? Oh,
It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, which is crazy. But it is the end of November, which is equally crazy.
it already feels like November. Like, it already feels like December. Like it's.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of the marketing for like my business because we're always a season ahead, or
Sure.
it's just that adulting. Kane and I had a long conversation about that yesterday. Like adulting is a whole like. The real adulting is a whole another beast.
When we were kids, we all wanted to do this adult thing because I think we all interpreted it as we can do what we want. We can have freedom. And then you become an adult and you realize you can't do what you want.
Yeah, but there's 2 types of adulting, right? I'll take my 20-something, under 25 adulting every day to the grown, I had to pay multiple taxes on multiple occasions throughout the years. I'll take that adulting because that was great. I used to work hard 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 weeks and then take 2 weeks off and travel. It was amazing. It was great. Anyway,
There's stages and levels to this that are deceptive.
They don't tell us.
No,
Anywho,
they don't.
There's the mini rant, but let's get to the first story.
Top rope.
What do we got going on?
Well, you led with the fact that there are some major signings, and we will start with this one, which is a significant one since this is Women's Wrestling Talk. Tasha Steelz had become kind of a pretty important free agent. She's, of course, been connected to Women's Wrestling Talk in a couple of ways. And her contract with Impact was coming to an end, and she's been talking about where will she go? Where will she go? Well, it is official. She is staying with Impact Wrestling. She had a conversation with the Miami Herald where she announced that she is indeed re-signed to Impact, and she is signed for the next couple of years. And so in terms of why she's doing it, she feels as though although she's accomplished a lot as a 2-time knockouts tag champion, a knockouts champion, the first ever Ultimate X winner, she still feels like there's more for her to do. You know, she'd like to be involved in case of a new match concept, a new title opportunity. And then there are some people she hasn't wrestled that she'd like to wrestle, like Deonna Purrazzo. So indeed, she will be staying with Impact. She made her debut with Impact back in May of 2019. She signed with them officially in May of 2020, and now she is back with Impact Wrestling. So congratulations to Tasha Steelz remaining with Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people hate on Impact, and it's kind of one of those things where, especially for the women, there's so many opportunities, and there's the one thing I really love. There's a big opportunity for creativity.
Yes.
Like there's so many people that can bring their ideas to the table, and then you can actually see it come to fruition on Impact. Whereas, other promotions, you might get it watered down, or you'll never see it because they say that's not going to work. So it's nice to be able to do that. It feels like they listen more than other promotions, and they're definitely women forward. So definitely congratulations to her. And we'll see what happens with all her storylines. Absolutely hilarious, by the way. Super hilarious.
Oh yeah, she is incredibly funny. A really, really cool person. The other thing that you were mentioning when it comes to Impact is I think people have to really kind of parse Impact. So for instance, what Impact may have done overall relative to their TV deals, et cetera, may have been challenging, but they were always forward thinking when it came to their women's division. I mean, I think back to kind of really the start of it back in 07, 08, where you had these amazing matches with Awesome Kong and Gail Kim, and, the creation of the Knockouts Championship, which they were doing years before anybody else started talking about a women's revolution or anything like that. They have always been at the forefront of women's wrestling, and I don't think they get enough credit for that. And when we start talking about stacked women's divisions, theirs has always been stacked and ahead of the curve. So I think Tasha staying in Impact is actually a good move. I think it's a really good move. She's obviously been one of the flag bearers of that division, certainly in its modern era. And she's a necessary component, and I think she will do well in that space to be honored as a leader. So congratulations.
Yeah, shout out to Tasha Steelz and Impact. All right, what up, Casey in the chat? Hey, Cliff,
hey,
how y'all doing? What do we have next?
Well, speaking of Impact, Impact has made a major announcement as they've announced a new international distribution partnership with a streaming service called DAZN. As a result, it'll bring Impact Wrestling content to more than 170 countries worldwide. This partnership actually began yesterday, and some of the countries that they'll be streaming to now include the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, Austria, France, Poland, Japan, Brazil. It's pretty crazy. So kind of the content that folks from DAZN will be able to see in these countries will include weekly episodes of Impact, also pay-per-views, live specials, and then some select titles from the Impact Wrestling archive, which is pretty amazing. Now, DAZN is similar to Fight TV in terms of it being very, very focused on combat sports, which is pretty important. Now, this is not the only wrestling deal that they have announced. DAZN has also announced a wrestling deal to have some media rights to Poland's Kingpin Primetime Wrestling, and that's going to be going on through the end of 2023. So DAZN certainly seems committed to pro wrestling, which is exciting, but having Impact as a part of that is actually a massive win for both DAZN and Impact. Of course, Impact, they have their own streaming service, but, anytime you partner with someone else's streaming service, as WWE has proven, you get the opportunity to really put the product in front of more eyes. So I'm excited for Impact. Some really, really big news for them connecting with DAZN.
Yeah, it feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, DAZN started right when Mayweather kind of cut ways with HBO.
Right.
And I think he went over to like Showtime, and then DAZN started popping up with like some boxing events. So it's really nice to see, them expanding. I think it's come to a point now in the next, 5 years, we're gonna see, really where all this content is going.
Mhm.
But we saw CNN Plus, etc. I think it's coming to a point now where it's like everybody, you can have your apps,
Yeah,
but the most important thing is like content. If you have the one
absolutely.
show, I mean, that's cute.
Yeah,
But to having options is another thing. So definitely congratulations to Impact. Shout out
yeah.
to Nikki, Ron, and Sammy in the chat.
Hey,
Um,
hey.
Impact does do. I think they do. Well, no, they don't do like house show. Well, no, it's not house shows. It's more
Yeah,
adult filming. Well,
yeah. They so they're traveling,
mhm,
but in their traveling, they are filming, which, when you talk about house shows can be kind of tricky
mhm,
because on the one hand, you're going to potentially make more money if you are filming something that will
right.
be seen, And think about this, the attendees, people want to go to a space that they know will be televised because they know something potentially can happen in that,
Mhm.
right? As opposed to a house show where there usually are no cameras, things are scaled down, and people know, well, hey, nothing, there's not going to be a major title change at a house show, like those kinds of things are there. So I think wrestling companies have understood that. Right now, it seems as though the major wrestling companies that's doing house shows right now is WWE, and they're still not doing them at the level that they were doing them pre-pandemic. So that was
Because
one of the things that
this
they
is
made changes with.
expensive.
It
Like
is.
at the end of the day, like okay, you're paying for your tickets and everything's going up, which is that's a whole
Yes.
other thing. But you're paying
Mhm.
for your ticket, and they have to cut part of the stadium in order for actually no, that's just for TV. So for house shows, it should be fine, so you can get the whole stadium. But how
Well,
much is that going into for the stadium versus all the other incidentals?
Well, that's the other thing too is you may rent out the whole arena, but you're not going to use the whole arena. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So, to your point, the staging is much smaller. Fewer people attend house shows than TV tapings. So, WWE has even had to decide, okay, how much sense do these house shows actually make?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't do nearly, I mean, in the 80s and 90s, there was a point where they were doing a show every day, and they've now gotten to the point where they'll tape Raw, they'll do SmackDown, and then each of them might have two or maybe three house shows tops in a given week. So it's all really changed. And I think, again, that's part of the changing nature of this particular market.
Mm-hmm.
The market is such where people want to see, what's going to happen.
And
And if
post.
and
Social
post.
media, yeah,
That's
social media is key
that's
too.
the other thing because house shows, the purpose of house shows have changed. House shows used to be a space where you could get more reps for
Mhm.
performers, but also you can try things out. So if newer stars were going to be tested, that would be the test ground for them. Well, you could do that when you didn't have people recording that. Then you
Right.
could make a very, very clear presentation in terms of a debut. You can't do that now. So a lot has changed in that regard. And I think as WWE has cut costs, they realize that's a particular space that they cut costs. And the pandemic certainly saw the live event piece cut significantly, and they haven't boosted that back to pre-pandemic eras anyway. So
Yeah,
yeah.
now that I think about it, because the last WWE house show I went to, oh my God, there's a whole backstory. I'll tell you about that. Yeah. The last house show I went to was WWE had like a Christmas house show
Hmm.
maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and
Yeah.
totally different vibe. Actually, no,
Yes.
I went to a couple other ones, but totally different vibe. And
Hmm.
I think the wrestlers do have a bit more fun, but I think somebody said
Yes.
the fatigue, all that stuff, and then I think also too, which is a good era that we're in. We're gone are the
Hmm.
days where it's just like you just continue to work. Like if
Right.
you not even an athlete, if you work for a company and you've had the slightest of headaches,
Hmm.
like there's some things that are on your side. Whereas back in the
Yeah.
day, it's like, nah, son,
Yeah.
you gonna put this
You
to
were
work.
grinding.
Yeah.
You were grinding. So yeah, times have
Delicious
changed.
spill the tea. I don't know if I should tell this story. This story was so horrible.
Well, it's up to you. I don't know the
Well, I
nature of
mean,
it. So,
it really doesn't make me look bad. Anyways, I went on a date to a house show. This is how like I
oh,
was like into wrestling. So, and also too, I was working
okay.
at the radio station, so I got tickets for free. But I
Okay.
went to a date to this house show, and what happened was he said he liked wrestling, whatever. I'm like, oh,
Okay.
bet I have tickets.
Hmm.
And so he lived, for people who are familiar with LA, he lived in Pasadena. I was in Van Nuys. So,
Okay.
I was like, all right, cool. So it was raining. So he comes and he parks, but I didn't see him park, and he came walking up to my house. And I'm like, oh, this is strange because I'm not driving.
Hmm.
But, independent woman. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, oh, who's driving? He's like, you are. I was like, okay, strike one. So we're
Oh,
driving to Inglewood, which is about 45 minutes away in the rain, to this house show. And then we said we're going to go to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles.
okay.
We go to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, and he conveniently figures out a way not to pay. And mind you, Roscoe's is not cheap. And Roscoe's is cheap. It's like, $30. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, independent
Mm.
women, strike two.
Mhm.
And so then we get to the Forum, and I've been to the Forum a couple times where I know they only accepted parking cash.
Okay.
I'm like, oh man, I need to get some money for the parking. He's like, oh, I'll find the ATM for you. Strike three.
I'll find the ATM. Wow.
Yes. So he found the Bank of America for me to take out the money, blah, blah, blah. And so in the midst of our conversation, at that time, I was going to a lot of different clubs. I was getting in like blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And there was a club that I was hitting up with celebrities, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And so now I'm like already pissed off. I'm like 45 minutes away from home, but the Canadian in me is like, I can't just leave the man at the thing because there's a Canadian TK that's just nice. And so anyways, I think we end up leaving early. I never stay full for events anyway. We end up leaving early. We're driving back. He's like, oh, what club are we hitting up? I was like, oh, we're not hitting up a club. You can't afford the club that I'm going to. And I dropped him off. And that is the short form of the story. There's so many other little things that went into that, but yeah.
So basically, you took him out for a date.
Pretty much. It
Mm.
was wild. I was just like, what is going on here? I felt bamboozled. Like it was just like,
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow.
Yes, we're not going.
Yeah.
And I actually went out and I had the best time of my life. It was.
I bet you did. You're like, I'm free.
Oh my God. Never
Wow.
again. It was right before Christmas. I think the next week I ended up going to Canada, and I was like, oh my. Anywho.
Fair enough. Wow.
Fair enough.
That was a story.
Glad I don't have to deal with that anymore.
He might be deal of the day at this point. Geez.
I know, right? What do we have next?
well, we mentioned, of course, Tasha Steelz, her former tag team partner, Kiera Hogan, of course, in AEW, recently had a conversation where, well, she's talking about the departure of the Baddies. So it's interesting. So the Baddies certainly were a thing, but if you'll notice, you really haven't seen the Baddies much anymore. She went on to Busted Open Radio, and she said timing is everything, and everything happens in the for a reason. My time in the Baddies was great. She saw how amazing the group could be. But then things just kind of fizzled off. Of course, Red Velvet got injured. They brought Layla Gray in, and nothing really ever happened from it. So seems as though the Baddies are done. She would like to be able to continue to wrestle and have some great matches. But
what up, Boza? I haven't seen you. Sorry to cut you off. I haven't seen you in a while. Hey, Boza.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but so the Baddies are no more, which I'm low-key disappointed about that. I mean, I think the idea of Jade kind of being in charge of a faction really builds everybody in this particular case. Certainly it was something for Kiera Hogan to do. It was a great spot for Red Velvet. Thought it was even cool for Layla Gray. But it was like the pieces started falling apart. Like once we saw Stokely walk away and get involved with the MJF stuff, then it was just like the baddies were there, but they couldn't really do anything. Like they were trying to get the title belt back from Nyla Rose, and they got stomped. I'm like, what's happening here? So
right. They
looks
should
like the
have
baddies
made
are
it like I mean the best form of I can't remember what the saying is, but anyways, they should have made like Toxic Attraction,
precisely
where they're actually wrestling. Because I think also in that interview she said that she hadn't wrestled in a long time.
right.
And
She hasn't wrestled since July 20th.
Right. So it's just kind of, and then also let's be honest, her debut on AEW was lackluster, not because of her. That's just because of AEW. So it's just kind of like, yes. However, it's like we hope that she gets, like, I'm glad we were able to see her on TV, but now that she's kind of working on the solo, what does that look like?
Right.
So we'll see.
And that's kind of the unfortunate thing that's happening here when it comes to the baddies. I mean, I don't know why. I feel like this was one of those things that, could have been big. It certainly could have been big. And I think Kiera being part of that was significant because of the folks that were there. She certainly had, I think, the most tenure in terms of wrestling.
Right.
Former Knockouts tag champion. People knew who she was and were excited about her being a part of this. As a part of a faction, as you well know, there are certain elements you have to have, right? You have to have whoever the star is, the current star. You have to have that experienced person who serves as, the wise person, dare I say. You also have to have the people that are on the come up as well. And so I think they had those elements there. But for whatever reason, the Kiera piece isn't working, which I just think is unfortunate. So we'll see if this turns into, and I see people in the chat saying that Kiera may interrupt tonight. If this turns into if this turns into a Kiera versus Jade kind of thing, that would be interesting. Jade is certainly in need of another opponent at this point.
Right.
I think they would have to, I think they should build Kiera up a bit before putting her against Jade, because at this point it feels like whoever they give to Jade, they are just feeding to her until at least she gets to 50-0. That's, at least. But
and that's the thing, they should have been built Kiera up. It's not like she doesn't have a resume. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference from, okay, there's the talent there and we're hoping, but Kiera has a whole resume that you can refer to.
Absolutely.
And it's again, we'll see what the other TK does. So
exactly. Well, one thing the other TK did do is actually officially sign AR Fox to All Elite. So if you'll remember, it was 2 weeks ago where there was a a trios match that took place that involved AR Fox and Top Flight as they took on the trios champions Death Triangle. After that match, in an interview backstage, AR Fox was offered a deal with AEW. He was actually very excited, overcome with emotion, but it is official. He has signed with All Elite, and tonight he will be battling Samoa Joe, which I'm not exactly sure that's a great signing gift, especially since Samoa Joe is now 2 belts Joe, but I think it'll certainly mark for a great match. For those folks who are unfamiliar with AR Fox, man, he's been doing a lot. Golly, he's been wrestling like crazy since 2009. He's been involved in Evolve, Dragon Gate. Also, if you watch Lucha Underground, he had an amazing feud with Swerve in Lucha, producing one of the most violent matches ever imaginable. Go back on Tubi and just watch all things Lucha. Lucha was incredible.
Talk about fumble the bag on that one.
Oh my God. Lucha was so amazing, and I mean they got it right from the whole idea of seasons. It was perfect. It was seasons. It was
lighting.
Yes, it was filmed well. I mean, you had that perfect
storytelling.
Yes, all of the people that came through Lucha It was unbelievable, the talent. Matter of fact, you don't have an AEW and the greatness that we've seen in NXT without Lucha. Lucha was really the forerunner for that. And so, yeah, AR Fox did some amazing things. Plus, people may not realize that he has a great training school here in Atlanta that has trained some incredible people. Austin Theory, AC Mack, a ton of people have come through that particular school. So this is something I think that's long overdue for AR Fox to be able to get this mainstream type of exposure. And I really, really hope that he has a wonderful career in AEW.
I do too. I hope that, this pairing with Samoa Joe's.
I don't like that. And here's why I don't like it. Samoa Joe is coming off the heels of that pay-per-view where he wins, the TNT championship. Now he's got 2 belts. He's being, flanked as a killer right now, which I understand. So to me, you don't say, congratulations, AR Fox. You are all elite. And your wonderful signing gift is, of all people, Samoa Joe. Right?
Right.
I would have rather seen him in a match, golly, against almost anybody else, at this point. Somebody where you think he actually would have a chance to fight. He'll be good for ROH. I mean, there's a lot of places I think that he could fit well. Of course.
Yeah, but starting back up, but we don't know what's happening with ROH. Unless I miss something, and I do miss a lot. But we haven't heard anything officially for ROH, so
here and I know we had kind of sort of put some of this conversation in the box, but I would.
Casey said it never.
Well, and let's just remember, in 2 weeks we have another Ring of Honor pay-per-view, Final Battle, and if you'll give me 15 seconds to say this, it was Final Battle 2021 where Ring of Honor actually had their last show as the old Ring of Honor. At this point, they had told everybody, hey, you're free to go. Nobody knew what was going to happen. They were going to take a 3-month hiatus, and then we've seen the story of Ring of Honor for 2022. And so I will say this. I think Nikki made a point. That's because Ring of Honor isn't fully owned by Tony Khan. But here's my deal. Figure it out. Right? I mean, it's been almost a year at this point. So figure out what you need to do to either fully own the product or figure out, if you're going to be partnered with somebody, what to do with it. But I think it is unfair to the Ring of Honor brand to have been just kind of stringing it along like this for all of 2022 and somehow expect us to get excited about this pay-per-view, when in fact it almost feels like the WWE launch of ECW, right? It's like it's not the product that we had. So, it's bad. It's bad.
And to Nikki's point, if this is true, Tony doesn't own the full production, and it's a legal issue. If I were that, and I am now putting ROH on my platform that has a TV deal, I wouldn't do that anymore. I'll be like, look, y'all don't, you guys are not, you guys have my hands tied. I'm putting on these pay-per-views. I can't do what I really want to do. And I'm putting this on the product. So you're standing to lose money as well. So therefore, the ROH is at a standstill until you guys figure out what you want to do. Because to put them on AEW and then to also do pay-per-views, whoever else is part owner, they're going to be like, all right, well, something's happening. The name is still out there.
Right.
So yeah, you need to starve that and then figure something out.
And to that end, I also say, I'm not really sure what the other owner really benefits from not allowing Tony Khan to fully do what he could potentially do at this point, because all that's happening is just barely having the name thrown out there. In my opinion, AEW is losing because Ring of Honor now is trying to share this already crowded time space now with AEW and their superstars. We don't know who's really AEW and who's really Ring of Honor, right? We can't say Ring of Honor even has a roster at this point. And all of their champions are AEW signees. So make it
Yeah.
make sense, you know?
At the end of the day, I just hope that it is not like how was it Kiera's first matches with Jade, and it was like less than 15 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, it
I'm
was really
just
bad.
hoping it's not that.
Yeah.
That's all I'm hoping for. Like I'm,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that, because it feels like if you make a big deal of a sign, because it's one thing, you know how WWE they do like the packages, like, oh, these people got signed, whatever. But if you make a
Right.
big deal on the signing of somebody and you put it on social
Mhm.
media, and it's
Right.
somebody that we know, it's not like a newbie,
Right.
to disrespect them like that on their first match on TV. I mean, come on, son. Like there's
I
so
com
many other things that could be done. So
I
I hope
completely
that's not
agree.
what happens.
I hope not either,
So
because that would not be good. That would not be good at all.
literally every time both sides see you put TK, I have to read back the sentence to because
To make sure it's yeah.
I always think
Yeah.
it's me because, you know.
You
Anyways,
are the TK.
what else do we have next?
Well, speaking of the other TK and AEW, he's made a very interesting announcement. Now, of course, we talked, I think it was Monday, about how over the weekend, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat had a great return to the ring in a six-man tag where he teamed with FTR, and they won that particular match. Well, Tony Khan was on Busted Open, and he said that he would be open to having Ricky the Dragon Steamboat have his last match in AEW. He says, you know, he's one of his personal heroes, and he would love to have Ricky Steamboat back in AEW at any time. Now, part of me wonders, number one, if Ricky Steamboat would go for that. Two, who on earth would Steamboat's opponent be? I'm
Oh, we
guessing.
know.
I know. We know what's going to happen, because if it doesn't happen that way, they're going to go on and ask for a piece of Ricky Steamboat's bag, because somehow Ricky Steamboat will have taken the concept from them some way, somehow. Don't know how. But yeah, you know, I think it's totally up to Ricky Steamboat. Honestly, Steamboat doesn't need it.
Oh no, that would be a good one. Sting. I was actually
Sting would
thinking
be a good one.
Ric Flair, because you know Ric
Yeah,
Flair would say yes.
of course Flair would
Sting
take
would
it.
be a good one.
Sting would be a good one, and because Steamboat could still go, I think the idea of Steamboat versus Sting at any form would be something fun to see.
Right.
I just think it has to be the right scenario. And again, I think strangely enough, Tony Khan needs this more than Ricky Steamboat does. So
Yeah, I
you know,
think Bosa said, and shout to Bosa. The reason why I shout him out is because in these AfterBuzz days, Bosa came with the facts, like
aha,
quick with it.
yes,
So I feel like he said, Bosa says it feels like a ratings grab. It's been ages since Dynamite has done a million views. So
yeah,
I mean, recognizable names. You're gonna bring in people who who know the names, who haven't watched necessarily wrestling as much, and like it makes sense.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I can go for that as long as it's
Yeah.
not Flair.
As long as it's not Flair, which by the way, you mentioned his name. I really wasn't going to mention this, and I did not even send you this story because the idea of it just almost made me, want to do
There
something really
was like
bad.
5 stories on Flair today. I didn't
Yeah.
include any of them, but they
Yeah,
were like
I didn't mention them either. So I'll do my best and forego the Flair story, though I think
he is
it's
the Kardashians of wrestling,
he's
or
gonna
vice
keep
versa,
himself.
or they're
Yeah.
the Flair of reality TV. I don't know, whichever version, but he manages to get himself talked about on a regular basis more
He
than
does.
average. So
Sure.
yes, both words.
Hilarious.
So what do we have next?
All right. So
want to do
yes.
facts?
Yeah, let's do that.
Vintage wrestling facts. Yeah.
That is always great to me. So I'm going to work backwards on this one. So we're going to start all the way back in 1998 for our first fact today. As it was this day in 1998 where the Big Boss Man defeats Mankind to win the Hardcore Championship in a ladder match. Now, here's why this is significant. It's actually the first time that the Hardcore Championship actually changed hands after the belt was initially awarded to Mankind. So if you remember how the Hardcore title came to be, it literally was gifted to Mankind by Vince McMahon. Of course, it was the broken old WWE Winged Eagle belt, which is still a very popular replica version. That one was all cracked. That became the Hardcore Championship. So, yeah, it was defended in a ladder match against the Big Boss Man. Boss Man would win it this day in 98. Here's a fun fact. You ready for this? That title would change hands 239 times before it was retired in August of 2002, which was barely 4 years later. Yeah, so first title change for the Hardcore title this day in 1998. We'll go back a year before that to 1997, where ECW had their annual event called November to Remember. Main event of that saw Shane Douglas defeat Bam Bam Bigelow to become the ECW World Heavyweight Champion. This particular win started a significant reign for Shane Douglas. In fact, it would become the longest reign in ECW history, longest world title reign, and that would be at 405 days. Shane Douglas, ironically, has the record also for the second longest reign as ECW World Champion at 385 days, which he did between 1994 and 95. Of course, that was also the time where he renamed the Eastern Championship Wrestling title to the Extreme Championship Wrestling title. Last but not least, this is a very fun fact. This day in 1979, the late, great Antonio Inoki defeated Bob Backlund in Tokushima, Japan, to become the WWE champion. He would vacate it a week later, and the WWE would never acknowledge this reign, crediting Bob Backlund with an uninterrupted 5.5-year reign. Now, the irony of this, of course, is earlier this year when Antonio Inoki passed away, that passing was announced on SmackDown, and his title reign was also acknowledged at that point, or at least the fact it was acknowledged that it wasn't acknowledged. However you look at it, Antonio Inoki today became the WWE champion back in 1979. And those are your vintage wrestling facts.
Vintage wrestling facts. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Let's roll right into, because this one I'm actually interested.
Heel of the day.
So this one is very, very interesting. This is almost art imitates life. So let's go here. Certainly not shy from controversy. The artist formerly known as Kane, Mayor Glenn Jacobs, has been in some trouble over time. He's been in trouble on the socials with some rather controversial comments about some ideas that he had about what should and shouldn't work. But all the while, what you may not have realized is that he's actually been involved in a lawsuit. Now, this lawsuit is really, really interesting. He's been the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee since 2018, won a second term in August of this year, but he's involved in a lawsuit, and here's what the lawsuit entails. So the lawsuit said that the county, Knox County, was going to ultimately have to pay its former Parks and Recreation director, ironically named Paul White. I think that's really interesting. Ended up having to pay him $150,000. Here's why. Because apparently Mayor Glenn Jacobs allegedly used county employees to work at his home. And in working at his home, they were supposed to be like doing things like removing a snake and all kinds of allegedly. Right. And so in addition, it was also said that he told White to lie to state investigators. And when White didn't lie to state investigators, apparently Mayor Kane cussed him out real good. So here's how they even found out about all this, which is amazing. So there was an allegation that Glenn Jacobs' chief of staff, Brian Hare, had been using a county-owned golf cart for his own private use at home. This is just not smart at all, right? So this leads to an investigation by the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee investigates, and now all of this snowballs into these allegations of all of these things happening. So apparently what Glenn Jacobs asked his county employees to do was to remove a snake from his house. Now, apparently what made this okay was that this work was not done on the clock, but rather it was done on their lunch break. Yeah. So the county ended up settling this suit with Paul White, paying him a total of $152,000, thanks to Mayor Kane asking his employees to remove a snake from his house, which is clearly not part of their job description. Now, Mayor Kane, you know better than this, sir.
Does he?
He should. He should.
You know what? The moment you said Tennessee, I thought Nikki. I was like, these are your peoples. What's going on?
Yeah.
Actually, it's every state. I'm pretty sure you don't even have to open the closet a crack. There's some shenanigans going on.
It's the same kind of fool, and it's funny because like you tend, or at least you're supposed to believe that you separate company things from personal things, right? Like company business is company business. And like you can ask your friends to do a favor, but not your employee. Like what?
And at the end of the day, like there would have been a way where he didn't have to pay the full amount. He could have just got a write-off on it. Like he should have a separate entity as an LLC, bill him through the LLC, write it off on the taxes. You get at least 70% back.
But you start getting mad at people. You start cussing at them. You start asking to lie to officials. Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
Yeah, you should learn that in elementary school. I mean, I don't know. Maybe my grade 8 teacher was a different breed, but she said the moment you have to lie on top of a lie on top of a lie,
that part,
it's never good. If you could get away with one, then that's between you and God. But the moment you have to lie, then you have to go and remember it, and then you have to get other people involved. It's never good look.
It's a bad look. So
look, Nikki, I have a good I have a good tax person.
And part of the great Booker T once said, don't hate the player, hate the game. The way that the game is set up is it's set up so that there are always seemingly loopholes around doing what other people think that they have to do.
Look, Nikki's on my head.
Nikki.
What is wrong with you? You know what, Nikki? Look, second time in a row. I don't even remember what day it was. I don't know if it was last week. On my head. But thank you for the education, people who didn't know. Yes, I'm Canadian. There is the difference. They're asking, what the hell is she talking about?
I picked it up. Grade 8th grade. I picked it up. I'm good. That's
no, but actually, not to promote other podcasts, but you should actually check out a podcast by the name. That's actually a network, Earn Your Leisure, and it's all in the game. It's all in the game. Set up yourself. Don't go and get yourself an LLC if you don't have a business, but go and set up do a DBA or something. America's not meant for, because these taxes.
It's bad business.
This is for the taxes. Anyways,
So with that said, Mayor Kane, Glenn Jacobs, you, sir, are the heel of the day.
Heel of the day!
Like, doesn't he have any friends? Like, I'm so shocked.
I'm like, for a snake?
Yeah. Like, how? What?
Can't the mayor call up pest control or something? Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, clearly you could say pest control, whomever, somebody, come on in. I don't know.
Or maybe then this is what does get people caught up. I call it the OJ effect, and that's a whole nother story. But I think sometimes if you're in a position of power and you've been in a position of power for so long, you think that you actually, like, you don't have to do like, oh, I don't need to do this LLC thing. I don't need to do that. I
Right.
can just call this person. Nah,
No,
not
no.
in this day and age.
No. Especially when you start see if you're going to then abuse the people that you're asking to do favors, this is how
Mhm.
that kind of thing
Yeah,
happens. So you
especially in
can't
this era, everybody's a
es-
news station. You can't phone with a news
everybody,
station.
everybody. So bad business. Well,
Well,
two other pieces of news before we get out of here. First and foremost, where's Brandy Rhodes? Right? Like I think everybody thought that once Cody made his return to WWE, that Brandy would be soon to follow. But she's actually announced to the world where she is and why she hasn't been back in a conversation she was having with Lacey Evans on a podcast called Two Truths and a Lie. She talked about why, indeed, she's not back in wrestling. It had everything to do with the travel schedule. Ironically, we talked earlier about house shows, right? Well, of course, with
mhm.
all of the things that she had to do, she being Brandy, she talked about how she would end up leaving at 6 a.m. And then if she wasn't booked, she'd get the latest flight so she could come back home because she was really not wanting to be away from her newborn that long. And so, yeah, the travel schedule for her is one of those things that says, no, thank you. I don't want to be involved. I'd rather be at home
Mhm.
with my child, which I completely understand. So that's why we've not seen Brandy Rhodes make her way to WWE, a wrestling ring announcing, or anywhere close. She wants to be home with her baby, and I completely understand that. So
Right, especially when
yeah,
one parent is actually traveling more, like,
right,
it
right.
doesn't make sense.
No, it
But,
makes
I
things very
mean,
difficult.
Becky and Seth are making it make sense, I guess.
Yeah, they figured it out, but the interesting part is, Becky obviously took almost a year to spend that particular time at home, and then they were able to get someone to help them on the road and things like that. And I don't know how many house shows Seth and Becky are doing these days.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So them being able to be, say, gone one night because they're both on Raw these days, being gone one night is way different than being gone, 3 or 4 or however many. And in the case of Brandy, who not only was doing Dynamite, but of course would be present on some occasions for Rampage, and then whatever else the business required,
Right.
since she was working in the office, made things interesting. And when you have to decide your kid or your job, and you can afford to say your kid, you choose your kid. I get it.
Yeah, and Bosa saying, I think the only way to bring her back is a ring announcer. And I actually don't
Hmm.
think so. I think I definitely don't see her doing that schedule like
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
And to bring her back for a storyline, how Maurice comes back with the Miz. Like she
Yeah.
comes for a storyline
Yep.
and then she out. And I think
Right.
that would be the best way for Brandy, where it's like, okay, you're committed to 6 weeks.
Right. Right.
And there's what, and this I and shout out to Flobito from AfterBuzz. He hates my theory, but I'm always good for a couple matches, like
Uh-huh.
couples matches. And there's more than enough couples in WWE where you can actually make a story for it. So
Sure.
I would be there for that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Nikki saying let her rest. She's gonna need it when Cody wins the Ring of Honor.
Ring of Honor's on your mind, I see. When
They need to get it. They need to get it together.
they certainly
So and
do.
then beats Roman. I see. I know you're not here every episode, Nikki, but that Roman Reigns theory. I
That's
don't
my
think I've
jam.
ever seen you go that hard before.
That's my jam. I
So
love
what's
that.
happening for the people who are joining us? There's certain stories that we can go down the rabbit hole, and the Roman Reigns WrestleMania and what's going to happen along with The Rock and all that stuff goes in the box because we don't know nothing on this show. We don't everything is speculation. We don't
Until it
know nothing
happens.
unless the wrestler comes up and slaps us in the head with the truth.
Mhm.
We don't know.
Allegedly.
Everything is in the box. So
In the box.
yeah.
Well, I can tell you what's not in the box. And that box leaves here.
Oh gosh.
Gosh.
Okay. Anyways,
Well,
what else is not in the box?
Well, we'll wrap up with this because this certainly is not in the box. This is an offer of congratulations to Mandy Rose, who has officially hit a very intriguing milestones, officially at 400 days as the NXT Women's Champion. She is currently the third longest reigning NXT Women's Champion in its history, a mere 17 days away from moving to the number 2 spot, which was held, or which is currently held, I should say, by Shayna Baszler. Seems to me like she'll be chasing history since Asuka has the longest reign at 522 days. So the last match we saw Mandy Rose in terms of a title defense was just a couple of weeks ago on NXT when she defeated Alba Fire in a last woman standing match. Of course, she was a part of a 6-woman tag last night where Toxic Attraction did win that particular match. So as of right now, I don't believe that there is a title defense currently set for her for the Deadline pay-per-view, though that could easily change. We do know, of course, that the Iron Survivor match, we found out 4 of the 5 participants for the men and the women last night on NXT. The winners of those matches will become number 1 contenders for the NXT Men's and the NXT Women's Championship. So perhaps then we'll find out who the next challenger is. But I'm intrigued to see if she's actually going to go after Asuka's record as the longest reigning NXT Women's Champion in history, which I think with another 120 days or so, that's 4 months. 4 months, January, February, March. Oh my God, April. NXT Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania weekend.
I mean, let's also be honest. Is there anybody? Actually, this is going to lead into the question because Ron actually, Mandy has got one of the best rebrands, which leads us into our last segment.
Lose or draw.
So we have all seen the era of Mandy Rose where she started her going to NXT, not back down, just going to NXT. Do you think where she is right now and the move she made was a win, a lose, or a draw?
I think it's an unequivocal win. Like it just, the way that we see her is what's so different now. She came into NXT, strangely enough, I'd say at the right time. Like right as we're getting into NXT 2.0, she comes in, and when she comes in as a veteran. She made, I think, some necessary visual changes. She dyed her hair. She started looking more intense. She started wrestling more intense. Gone was the whole, just really, she really became a serious competitor. And so she started getting the wins and doing the things that helped. And it's funny, we talked about Jade and the Baddies, making the comparison to them and Toxic Attraction. Toxic Attraction, I think, is what really helped the Mandy rebrand happen. To have 2 other people to serve as your heavies who aren't just your sidekicks, but they're champions in and of themselves, but you're the clear leader of the crew. That all really led to us now believing that Mandy Rose can be the longstanding NXT Women's Champion. Now, I'm not going to be the one to try to compare her reign to anyone else's reign. I think the NXT 2.0 almost gets a small asterisk compared to the previous NXT and their women's division. But with that said, 400 days is still 400 days. And she's had some great matches, some great opponents. And right now we look at Mandy Rose much better than we did when she first got to NXT. So this is absolutely a win.
Oh, see, both. And then I'm gonna read this. Before I read this, this is all we all allegedly. Both is saying, although if we listen to Athena's interview with Chris Van Dant, there is supposedly another reason why Mandy has gotten this push in NXT. Look.
Well, I'm not going to dispute Athena's what Athena's assessment of certain things have been over time. What I will say is it's clear she's put in the work. Push or not. And I think this is the part of wrestling that people forget. People can book people a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, the performers still have to get in there and get the work done. They still have to be athletic. They still have to do all of those things, regardless of what people do and don't write. And so I think she proved that she's deserving of being the NXT Women's Champion right now. She's put in the work. And so it's hard to make that argument. Now we do have to put respect on her name. And so almost regardless of the reason or the alleged reason why she may have gotten the push, I want to be careful when I say this, but I think one of the things that is problematic to me about this is I think sometimes it's unfortunate when people try to take away people's accomplishments because they didn't get said accomplishment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for instance, and I don't want to turn this into Athena, but since Athena was mentioned, okay, so Athena's WWE career, Athena's AEW career. So are we going to say all of it is because of the booking? Can all of it be because of the book? I mean, maybe everybody's booking bad. I don't know. So all I'm saying is I don't want Mandy Rose's work to be clouded because of something that somebody else said in an interview, when we can look at, the matches that Mandy has had, all Mandy has done to really become a verifiable star. I think that's the important thing. And again, I say all of these promotions, all of these opportunities, to me, I'm just like, I've seen this movie before. Right? It's just throw off on everybody else, and because you weren't able to accomplish what you felt like you should have accomplished. When Athena was brought in to NXT, she was brought in. You talked about JD. Oh, gosh.
You tell us that story, JD.
Right. TK, when we were talking about AR Fox, you talked about how sometimes the WWE will set up people with great vignettes and lead-ins. Ember Moon had a great lead-in to come into NXT. Had great packaging to come into NXT. Had a tough time beating Asuka, and that was fair. Had some great matches there. Ultimately became the NXT Women's Champion, right? Became somebody that we were like, yes, she's doing it. Got over to the main roster, didn't have as much success for whatever your reasons, okay? Brought her back to NXT. Didn't have the same level of success the second time around in NXT as she did the first time in NXT. Then she gets released, goes over to AEW, has a 5-minute match on a pay-per-view with Jade. Now, we can blame whoever we want for that, but it's been more than just a 5-minute match. Her AEW career at this point has been, forgettable. So I don't know how long we can keep blaming bookers for this.
Yes and no. I get what you're saying. And it's one of those things where with Mandy, it feels like whatever they've given to her, she's tried to make it work. When she had that porn star music on the main roster, like, oh my God, why? But she committed to it every time she won. And I don't know if the person she is now. When they put her with Otis. Yeah. That too. I don't know if the person she is now is truly who she is. It seems like it. Like the mix between like, I know I'm hot, but I can also kick your ass. Like, I don't know if that is always who she is and was, and they allowed her to do that, but it's working. Right. And they gave her the rock and she's making it work. With Athena, it's just kind of one of those things where we were talking about before we got on the show. Life sometimes, and it could be the booking, because she did have some of the opportunities, but we've seen what AEW has done with other female wrestlers as well. So it could be partly the booking, and we don't know what happens backstage. So all of this, again, allegedly. But you know, regardless of what, whenever you get that rock and what you do with it, whether it's a short time or a long time, I was telling Kane this yesterday. If you are at your job, and y'all don't say TK said, or just say the other TK said. If you are at your job and you're like, this S is horrible, make sure your exit is memorable. Make sure that when you burn it down, they be like, yeah, that was wrong. But they remember that. And so that's what you want. That's what you want. You want to be able to, whether it's a short time or long time, wrestling or whatever, it's memorable. And I think Mandy's managed to do that. Athena, we're gonna see in the next 5 years, not necessarily she signed to AEW, but if we remember those high points in her career. Yeah. And it's not necessarily has to do with part of its talent, part of its luck of the draw, because there's a whole bunch of other people backstage that make things happen. So we'll see what happens.
And just to piggyback off of your point really quick, I think the whole and a lot of people have said this over time. You may be given 30 seconds on TV. Make the most of the 30 seconds that you get. And to me, I think the perfect example of that right now is Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was not supposed to be this hot. They did not plan for Sami Zayn to be so hot that even the commentators can't get his name right because they're calling him Sammy Uso, right? Nobody planned for that. And so that to me, that is, oh gosh, that is why and Sammy's become one of the hottest acts in the company and ends up now in the main event of Survivor Series. Because he took the little that he had and he made it much. And I think that's the piece that other people can be missing. And so it's easy to throw off on somebody. But Mandy took what she was given. And here's the thing. Many would look at going from Raw and SmackDown to NXT as a demotion, particularly when it's NXT 2.0. Being billed as developmental and not the third brand. So to me, I'm just sitting back going, she took that, ran with it, certainly didn't publicly complain. I don't know if she privately complained, but she took it, ran with it, became champion, and then managed to last through the transition, the merger of NXT UK, et cetera, et cetera. Man, she can't be knocked. And I'll just say this. I know the comment was about blonde hair and blue eyes, et cetera, but the champions right now in WWE on the female side are not blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to my blonde hair, blue eyed people. I can't even say. Well, I mean, anyways, it's just not the time. It's just no offense to my white guys, who are watching this, which I don't think it's. No, I don't know. Anyways, it's just not the time. It's just the cycle. This is a circle of whatever is going on in the culture. But yeah, I mean, and she's not the first. I mean, we can name a couple people who went to NXT and tried it out and actually didn't even make it back to the main roster.
Right.
So, so let's give. And I'll be honest, when Mandy was on the main roster, especially during those last two stints of the storylines, it was like I wasn't feeling it, but definitely this is I don't know if it was your idea, I don't know if it's a combination of, but you are hitting it out the park regardless if people don't like whatever. You just like F it, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it. So definitely congratulations to you for that. All the tangents, wow, we started off with the tangent.
Right, we just
so
Boza is right on this though. Talking about how Mandy has killed it as women's champion. Plus, she killed it at Halloween Havoc after suffering 2 losses: the loss of her brother and her best friend from her days on Tough Enough. Right, Sarah Lee and her brother.
See what I mean? Boza with the
And he's exactly right. I don't think that people consider again, because we see people on our TV, we don't always recognize what they're dealing with in their personal lives, but to be able to deal with those major losses and still come out and perform and do her job well. That's impressive. That's incredible. And that speaks to her maturity at this point.
Yeah.
She understands where she is in the company, and and they were nice enough to still somewhat keep her on TV while she was dealing with all of that as well. So it was just all brilliantly done. Brilliantly done.
So congratulations to Mandy in her 400 days,
400 days and counting.
400 days and counting. But shout out to everybody in the chat. Y'all was talkative.
Yes. You guys are fired up.
Cliff, Ron, Nikki, Sammy, JD, Bosa. Y'all made it very, very, very interesting. And, here we are. We have now come to the end of the program. With that being said, Professor, where can everybody find you?
Of course, you can find me at Bonafide on all of the socials. Southern Honor Wrestling, we've got a big show. Our last show of the year is coming next Friday. So that should be pretty fantastic. Also, we've got some Battle Slam announcements that are coming. Championship District Wrestling, another big show that happened this past Sunday. That will be out very, very soon. And all sorts of other cool things. So make sure you're following us at Bonafide on all the socials.
And definitely check out our website, WWT Talk Pod. We have all the articles up there. So definitely check that out. Check out all our social media at WWT Talk Pod. We got so much things going as well. FYI, if you're enjoying WWT Live, you're going to enjoy us for 2 more weeks, because then we're going to take 2 weeks off because the end of the year or the new year is coming, and we need some time to shift some things. So enjoy us for the next 2 weeks. We might have some surprises, because we did have some prizes on our 100th episode. So we might have some surprises. We'll see. But other than that, you can follow me on everything at TK Trinidad. Thank you guys so much for chatting with us. We will be back. I honestly thought it was Monday. I don't know what's going on with me. We will be back on Friday.
Yes.
WWT Live at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. Other than that, thank you guys for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao, y'all.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.